Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindaki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath, Shama Kund Radha Kund, Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Jamuna Maya Ki, Ganga Maya Ki, Tulsi Devi Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrindaki, Harinam Sankirtan Yogi Ki, Prihatmananda Transcendental Book Distribution Ki, ISKCON Ireland Ki, Om Himande, assembled devotees, glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna. Namaste Narasimhaya. Shri Navina Sandara Simare Brahman ki Bhakti Shiromani Parab Maharaj ki Nitya Gaura Pramanande.
Vrindavan tulsi vyaya vyaya kesavasya Krishnavati Vasudevi Satate Namaha.
Vrindavan tulsi vyaya vyaya kesavasya Krishnavati Vasudevi Satate Namaha.
Vrindavan tulsi vyaya vyaya kesavasya Krishnavati Vasudevi Satate Namaha.
Vrindavan tulsi vyaya vyaya kesavasya Krishnavati Vasudevi Satate Namaha.
Vrindai tulsi devya vyaya kesavasya Vishnu bhakti buddhadevi satvate namaha.
Vrindavan tulsi vyaya vyaya kesavasya Krishnavati Vasudevi Satate Namaha.
Krishna bhakti vrindaini vrindadevi tulsi maharani ki
Jai.
Namo Namaha Tulsi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Tulsi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Krishna Deva Radha Krishna
Krishna Prem Budai Nivenda Devi Tulsi Mahavani Ki
चितो दर्पण मार्जरम महाभावाग्नि निर्वापरम श्रेयाखेरवसंदिकाविकरणम विद्यावधूजीवनम आनन्दं बुद्धिवर्धनम प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृतस्वादनम् सर्वात्मसमृतं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्णसङ्कीर्तनं नामकारि बहुधा निज सर्वशक्तिस्तत्रार्पितमयमृतस्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन्महापि दुर्दैवं विसृशं विहाजलीनानुरागः कृणादपि सुनीचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानिनामानतेन कीर्तनीय सदा हरि नदनं न जलं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीशकामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवताद्भक्तिर्हैतु की त्वयि ऐनन्दतनुजा किङ्करं पतितं मां विस्मयामुरो कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थितधूलिसदृशं विचिन्तया नयनं गतश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदहृदया गिरा पुलकैर्निचितं वपुर्गदा तव नाम ग्रहणे भविष्यति युगायितं निमेषेण चक्षुषा प्राविश्यायितं शून्यायितं जगत्सर्वं गोविन्दमयेन मे आश्लिष्य पादतां विनष्टु माम् आदर्शिणां वर्णतां करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पटो मतप्राणनाथस्तु सेवनापरः हरे कृष्णा Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. 10 phrases to the Holy Name. First, to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for quoting the holy names of the Lord. Second, to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of the Lord Vishnu. Third, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. Fourth, to blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance to the Vedic religion. Fifth, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to many imagination. Sixth, to give some interpretations to the holy name of the Lord. Seventh, to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. Eighth, to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as future activities karma. Ninth, to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. Tenth, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna praying.
Now let's offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like the desire trees, they fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls.
Now we will chant till 7:50. Then we will have darshan, darshanarati, and then Prabhupada Arati, followed by Prasad.
Hare
Krishna
Divine grace. Basic Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Anandacharya Shri Prabhupada Ananda Kudu Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Indra Srimad Bhagavatam ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru Gauranga.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to be here.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya 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 Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Kangalera Bhajan it's closer to me, sorry. Kangalera Bhujana Ranga Deka Gohari Hari Bolo Bali Dara Ranga Desha Kari Kangalera Bhujana Ranga Deka Gohari Hari Bolo Bali Dara Ranga Desha Kari Kangalera Bhujana Ranga Deka Gohari Hari Bolo Bali Dara Ranga Desha Kari. Oh, I see. Do you understand? Well, it's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 14, text 45. Yeah, I probably should have given you that ahead of time. Oh. But I'm actually going to start from text 37 reading and then finish on this one that I just chanted and then read that purport just to give a little flavor of the lead up to the verse that I chanted. Okay. So this chapter is the Lord's Vrindavan pastimes. Starting at text 37. There then arrived 5 or 7 loads of plates made of the leaves of the Kekaki tree. Each man was supplied 10 of these plates, and in this way the leaf dishes were distributed. This is, these verses can be very practical for us also. I'm thinking now of Rath Yatra, how we distribute Prashadam or Rath Yatra. Of course, we don't use leaf plates, but just the division of work involved. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood, and another beautiful verse actually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood the labor of all the kirtan chanters. So the Guruji was chanting Puja for us earlier. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood the labor of all the kirtan chanters. Therefore, he was very eager to feed them sumptuously. All the devotees sat down in lines, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally began to distribute the prasadam. But the devotees would not accept the prasadam until Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took it. Swarup Goswami informed the Lord of this. Swarup Damodar said, "My Lord, please sit down. No one will eat until you do." At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down with his personal associates and had every one of them fed very sumptuously until they were filled up to their necks. And after finishing, the Lord washed his mouth and sat down. There was so much extra prasadam that it was distributed to thousands. Following the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Govinda, his personal servant, called for all the poor beggars who were unhappy due to their poverty and fed them sumptuously. And then the one that I chanted. Observing the beggars eating prasadam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted Hari Bol and instructed them to chant the holy name. In a song, Srila Prabhupada, by his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki. In a song, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur chants, Miche Mayada Vase, Yacha Beshe, Kacha Habu Dugu Bai, Jiva Krishna Das, E Vivasha. Kale Ka Ara Duka Nai. O people, why are you being captivated by the waves of the ocean of nescience? If you would immediately accept Lord Sri Krishna as your eternal master, there would be no chance of being carried away by the waves of illusion. Then all your sufferings would stop. That's the end of the quote from the verse that we just read. Krishna conducts the material world under the three modes of material nature. And consequently, there are three platforms of life: higher, middle, and lower. On whatever platform one may be situated, one is tossed by the waves of material nature. Someone may be rich, someone may be middle class, and someone may be a poor beggar. It doesn't matter. As long as one is under the spell of the three modes of material nature, he must continue to experience these divisions. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised the beggars to chant Hari Bol while taking prasadam. Chanting means accepting oneself as the eternal servant of Krishna. This is the only solution, regardless of social position. Everyone is suffering under the spell of Maya. Therefore, the best course is to learn how to get out of the clutches of Maya. How to do so is stated by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chayo vyapicharena bhakti yogena sevaite sagunam samatiyaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. One can overcome the spell of Maya and attain the transcendental platform by agreeing to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Devotional service begins with Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised the beggars to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for elevation to the transcendental position. On the transcendental platform, there is no distinction between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. Om Ajana Tamaranda Shah. Shri Chaitanya Bhutale Swaya Rupa Ramayam Dabaki Swadhantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai, Hare Krishna, everybody. Lots to talk about there in the purport, and two particular points that I'll go back to. But just reading the verses, you know, and of course, this is Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. These are recent, 500 years in the eyes of eternity is absolutely nothing. 500 years, I'm looking at Anthony Tai now because he was born in the UK, as was I. And in school we learnt about, the history that we learned was about, very much focused, and for me at least, very much focused on the Tudor period. King Henry VIII, you may have heard of him. And this was all during Lord Chaitanya's time, and all the facts that they have about that period in Europe, most of it, the vast majority of it, is not contested, it's accurate information. So, people can cast doubt on Krishna's appearance and Krishna's pastimes, and they do say very clearly, this is all mythology, didn't exist. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But as it relates, by the way, I should stop doing this actually, because thoughts come in that distract me from what I really want to say. But it's very interesting that, you know, that was very much what the British did when they went to India. They wanted to undermine, in fact, there was a whole thing that took place. I may have told this story before, but I'll just quickly repeat it. There was a whole thing that took place that the British authorities, they wanted to know how to control India. It's like 7,000 miles away. Huge population, even during that time, I think it was roughly half of what the population is now, but still a huge population, particularly compared to the population of the UK. So they wanted to know, we're a small country with a much smaller population. This country is 7,000 miles away, much bigger population, much bigger land mass. How do we control it? You know? So they sent a very elevated personality. His name was elevated in terms of his intelligence and understanding. His name was Sir William Jones. We have heads shaking here in the thing. He's actually buried in the Park Street Park Street Cemetery. Park Street Cemetery in Kolkata. He's buried. That's where his big headstone, big tomb. You know? So William Jones, and he was a very young guy actually. Actually, by the age of 17, he could speak something like, and they weren't just European languages. He could speak, you know, Farsi and Mandarin and different languages around the world. And when he went to India, he encountered Sanskrit. He wrote this, I don't have it now in front of me, but he wrote this beautiful piece glorifying the Sanskrit language, saying that there is nothing more beautiful, more rhythmic, more antiquated. In other words, it's the most ancient. Because even when I was going to school, we were told that Latin and Greek were the ancient languages from which all other languages came. William Jones totally smashed that. He said, no, everything is coming from this language called Sanskrit, the language of the gods. And I think within a year of arriving in India, he was fluent in the Sanskrit language. So another language again. He was fluent, he could converse in it. Not just quote verses like we tend to do, but he could actually converse in it. So anyway, he was sent there on his mission, and he was a judge. His profession was he was a judge, and he was sent there, and no doubt he was paid handsomely by the British establishment. But when he got there, he just fell in love with India and Indian culture, the Sanskrit language, completely fell in love with it. But because his mission to go there was to find out how to control this country, and he was being paid for that, he felt duty-bound and obligated that he had to follow through on that. But when he was writing his report, lengthy report for the British establishment, you know, this is back in the, when did Jones go? The 1700s, right? Back in the 1700s. So it's a long time ago, and he wrote this detailed report. I guess it was all handwritten in those days. And he started it, his kind of executive summary, the start of his report said that I do not want to write this report, and I do not want to give you the information that I'm going to give you. But because I accepted this mission prior to me falling in love with it, Indian culture and the Sanskrit language, and because I've been paid handsomely, I feel duty-bound that I have to do that. But actually I do not want to do it, because you're going to misuse what I'm going to tell you. But basically the information that came back was, in a nutshell, was that what you've got to do is you've got to get the Brahminical class to accept a wage. And once you do that, because they are the trusted class, everyone listens to them, everyone takes their advice, once you do that, you will have them in your pocket, just like you have me in your pocket, because I took payment from you. And once you have them in your pocket, because they're accepting money from you, you will then be able to, through them, direct them how to, you know, control the population. Anyway, sorry, that was a complete sideshow. I didn't intend to speak that, but it just came up in the context of this contemporary history of what goes on, what goes on. But anyway, so Lord Chaitanya's pastime only 500 years ago, so all these things are well documented. But what I just found interesting in in reading those verses was the one about the Kirtaneers and the hard labour that they engage in. Certainly Manu will relate to this, and I'm sure that Ananta might relate to this. I don't know about anyone else in the room well. But when we first became devotees, you know, in the early 80s, aspiring devotees, still aspiring, but when we came in contact with ISKCON, literally the first service, I mean literally in ISKCON, in those days, what could happen is you could come to a Sunday feast like today will be a Sunday feast. You could come to a Sunday feast program. You could decide that you want to actually commit to trying to be a devotee, whatever. And within a few hours, you could be in a Sankirtan band, you know. So you could have come to a Sunday feast as a new person, kind of made the commitment, oh, I like this and whatever, and then you know the devotees convince you to make that commitment. Straight after the Sunday feast, you could find yourself in a van being driven 5 hours down to Kerry or somewhere, and the next morning, on the Monday morning at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, you could be standing on the streets of Tralee, you know, distributing books. You know, that was kind of the process that we had. And when we did that, the amount of times, and you know, quite a few times, you know, you'd be out on the street distributing books, and you know, we all know that there's kind of arguably no more challenging service for devotees than distributing books, stopping people, etc., trying to convince them to take a book, all that. It's not an easy service in that sense. It takes good mental kind of strength, etc. Yet invariably, once a day, you would hear someone on the street, a non-devotee walking past, looking at you, and you're there, you know, big bag, book bag, which is heavy, you know, you're trying to stop people through book. And invariably you get at least one person there shouting over saying, "Why don't you get a job?" You're laughing, it's such a common thing, you know. And you know, my response, I started developing a response to that. I said, "You come and do my job, see how good you are at my job," you know. But it's here, it's not even book distribution, it's the kirtaneers. And Lord Chaitanya is saying, you've got to feed them very sumptuously because, you know, it's hard labor that they're engaged in. You know, it takes real energy. You got Harinam, it takes a real energy to be out there for a few hours chanting Hare Krishna like that. So, yeah, so that was one thing. And then the other one that came to mind was when Lord Chaitanya wanted to serve the prasadam to the devotees, but then the devotees wouldn't eat the prasadam because they wanted Lord Chaitanya to take prasadam first. And that just, that kind of nice mood of everyone wanting to serve everybody like that. Ultimately, somebody has to eat the prasadam first, otherwise it'll all go cold and go off and everyone will be hungry, you know. But it's just nice that the exchange, the kind of little battle that takes place. And it reminds me, of course, of the first time that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda met each other. I think Lord Chaitanya was 32, Lord Nityananda was 32, sorry, and Lord Chaitanya was about 20. And when they first met, because Lord Nityananda is no different than Lord Balaram, the Adi Guru, the original Guru, Lord Chaitanya wanted to offer him Vyasa Puja. And when Lord Nityananda saw what Lord Chaitanya was doing, ascending the different paraphernalia and whatever, he's going to start offering him Vyasa Puja. Immediately Lord Chaitanya, when Lord Nityananda's not looking, he's gone off to get a flower or whatever it is. Lord Chaitanya grabs all the paraphernalia, and when Lord Nityananda comes back, Lord Chaitanya is offering him, the other way around, Lord Chaitanya is offering Lord Chaitanya Vyasa Puja, and then vice versa, and it goes backwards and forwards. So it's just a nice mood to try and imbibe as best as we can, that mood of not wanting to be the one receiving the service, but we want to be the one giving the service. And actually in the Western world, in the English-speaking world, we have this phrase that giving is better than receiving, like that. And in that context, we can understand, let's say, the role of a guru, formally the role of a guru, Diksha Guru. We can understand then that should be an austerity, because they're accepting the service of the disciples, you know, and we should kind of see it in that light. And then one more thing that crossed my mind was the phrase where Lord Chaitanya says, you know, they're working hard, etc. They should be filled up to their necks. There obviously was not an obesity crisis in India when Lord Chaitanya was making that statement, you know. And then the whole thing about getting everyone to chant, and in the purport it says there's no distinction between whether you're rich or poor or even middle class. I think probably uses the phrase middle class, it doesn't matter. So we have Keith and his team filling people up to the necks around the corner every week, so which is wonderful. It would be amazing if we could eventually add to that, because what happened here was when they received all the prasadam, then Lord Chaitanya induced them to chant Hare Krishna, you know, or even just Hare Bol like that, and that sort of completes the whole thing. But yeah, fill them up to their necks. And I picked this verse today, or this section today, because a few days ago we had Nirjala Kadashi, and today is the Panahati Festival, the Chip Rice Festival in Panahati. So Prashadam is just one of these things that, like I was saying about the book distribution, you get people saying to you, get a job, you know. Harinam is generally better received, but you do still get people who sort of, you know, don't like the idea that they're out on the street chanting, oh, and they put their hands to their ears. So you still get some negative reaction in relation to Harinam. But you rarely, if ever, get a negative reaction to Prashadam. And Prabhupada, he was ever thinking, like literally constantly thinking how to attract people to Krishna. How to attract people to Krishna. Actually, I just read the other day, which was actually it's in this section actually of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is quite amazing, because this is the section where King Prataparudra for the first time takes off his royal dress and puts on Vaishnav dress. Just literally in this section that I read from, it's just a few verses before. The King Prataparudra drops his royal dress, puts on devotional dress for the first time. And Prabhupada takes the opportunity in that purport. It's quite amazing because King Prataparudra is taking off quote-unquote karmi dress and putting on devotional dress. But Prabhupada takes the exact different approach in the purport to talk about taking off devotional dress and putting on karmi dress. And he says, this is very instructive, meaning King Prataparudra switching dress. This is very instructive because in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, sometimes we get criticized for wearing civilian dress when we're distributing books on the street. And Prabhupada says, those people do not understand the higher principle. And the higher principle is whatever is beneficial for Krishna consciousness and whatever is beneficial for attracting souls to Krishna consciousness, that is what we should do, and we should not consider external circumstances. Which, again, it's just so interesting that Prabhupada turns that whole thing on its head and goes the other way from switching from devotional dress to non-devotee dress. So that principle of doing everything. So Prabhupada was constantly thinking of how to attract people to Krishna consciousness. And he came up with so many different ways, anyway, self-sufficient communities, scientific preaching, the VI, many different kind of ways that he came up with. But the three main ways, and they will remain the three main ways, I think, is through book distribution, through Harinam, and through Prashadam distribution. But Prashadam distribution is this one thing that people rarely, if ever, give us a negative reaction to. What's really interesting, Keith is out there every week and distributing plates, and the figures come in, and they look like they're ever increasing. But here's the funny thing: he's giving that prashadam out for free. I hope he's giving that prashadam out for free, yet we get more people every day. I was just in London the other day, and they're opening a second kind of Govinda's, not far away actually, it's just a 10-minute walk from Soho Street. They had a cafe there before, they tried to kind of hold a vegan thing that didn't really work out so well, so now they're basically just turning it into a second Govinda's. But in the original Govinda's, which is, by the way, where I joined the Hare Krishna movement in the original, it used to be called, in those days, Healthy, Wealthy and Wise, filling people up to their necks. I was just talking to the devotee in charge there, you probably know him, Tirupati, and I said to him, I think you're averaging about 4,000 a day now in the Govindas in Soho Street. And he laughed at me, he said, oh, we're behind the times. He said, we're averaging 5,000 a day now. So 5,000 sterling a day. So I think that if we equate that to, say, the average spend being about £10, that's 500 customers a day. So that's 6 days a week, 3,000 customers a week. Notwithstanding all the wonderful efforts of Keith and his team, they're probably not reaching that level yet. Yet they're giving it out for free. And this is the point that I want to make. Prashadam is so powerful. You know how hard it is doing book distribution. You sometimes meet people who are really appreciative of what we do and are really generous, and they'll give a decent donation. But oftentimes it's a struggle to get anything out of them when you're distributing books. Yet here we open restaurants and we have queues of people coming in to pay us for prasadam. You know, it's the power of prasadam, you know, and it's on an equal footing. The distribution of prasadam can literally liberate the entire universe. And yet people want it because they come to us and they pay us for it. So just to focus on it, because just talking about prasadam. So in the Panihati, and that's an interesting pastime as well, very interesting pastime. Panihati is just about 10 kilometers, 10 miles, 10 kilometers north of Calcutta. It's kind of in the Calcutta suburbs, really. So before Lord Chaitanya's time, it was a big center for Buddhism. Actually, not just Buddhism, but Tantric Buddhism. It was a big center for that. And then Lord Chaitanya appeared, and it turned into a big center for Gaudiya Vaishnavas and Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In fact, I think Raghava Pandit's house is still there in Panihati. You can actually go and visit it. And also, which I didn't know, was that because of the Ganga, the river Ganga, it was a big trade center during those times as well. And they used to import a particular type of rice. It was considered a really special type of rice from Bangladesh, is where they used to bring it from. And it was called panetti. That was what the rice was called, panetti. And they say that that's where the name Panihati came from. So it came from that trade. But anyway, so later on, when it became kind of more of a Gaudiya center, prior to that, Raghunath Das Goswami had approached Lord Chaitanya, and he was such a renounced guy, like our little friend here, sitting here. He was young, since a young boy. Actually, you remind me a little bit about, you're like kind of like Prahlad Maharaj's sister, you know, you're coming to all these programs. The only thing you have to do now is encourage your other girls and boys of your age to come to them as well. But so a little bit like that, Raghunath Das Goswami, he was renounced from a very early age. He wanted to join Lord Chaitanya's movement. That's interesting as well. Lord Chaitanya kind of discouraged him a little bit, age being one factor in different things, but he kind of discouraged him a little bit. But he said, don't worry, you know, Krishna will come and deliver you. And it was only a couple of years later then that Lord Nityananda arrived in Panihati. And when Lord Nityananda arrived there, and Raghunath Das Goswami heard that he had arrived, he wanted to meet Lord Nityananda, so he went to his father, which is also interesting, you know, because his father was a devotee in that sense. I didn't go to my father to ask him, Dad, can I go to the temple today? But in those days you could do that because, you know, essentially they were all devotees. So he went to his father and he asked, his father was Govardhan Mazumdar, I think was his name, and he went to him and asked him, could he go and see Lord Nityananda? And his father said, no problem. So he went to see Lord Nityananda. When he actually first saw Lord Nityananda was surrounded by lots of devotees. And Raghunath Das Goswami, which is kind of, I suppose, this is the same for all of us really, he got a little shy, you know, there's a lot of people going over and whatever, and he didn't want to sort of just walk in uninvited kind of thing. So he paid his obeisances from a distance. But then some of the devotees saw this person paying obeisance from a distance and told Lord Nityananda. And of course we know Lord Nityananda was this, you know, incredible kind of personality. In English, I suppose we would say larger than life, you know, he was quite humorous and, you know, he's an avid dude kind of. So when they told him that this person paid obeisance from a distance, he called him over, he beckoned him over. And just imagine, you know, he was shy. I don't know if that's because he was shy, you know. Now he's seen, now he's beckoned over to Lord Nityananda. And the first thing Lord Nityananda says to him is this, oh, you're a big thief, hiding there in the shadows. Like, hiding there in the shadows like a big thief, that kind of thing, you know. And then he said, so I have to punish you. Because this festival, the Panihati Chidadahi festival, is actually known also as the festival of punishment, which is kind of interesting. So the punishment was, because Raghunath Das Goswami was hiding like that, he says, I have to punish you. He says, so the punishment is you have to arrange a big festival here. And I was thinking when I was reading that, I was thinking that, you know, it's interesting that anybody, Sugati Prabhu, is he still here? There he is. Man and other devotees, whatever. It's like, what's the punishment? The punishment is you have to organize this festival. So why is that? Now, it was kind of done in a joking mood, but at the same time, why is that a punishment? Because management is so challenging, right? Organizing and managing things is a challenge. It's not easy. You know, we have to put a lot of energy and effort and mental energy into it, you know, to make sure things go smoothly and run nicely, etc. So so that was his punishment. He had to organise that festival. And as we know, that festival is an interesting festival. I've been there actually on festival day once. I was there on the festival day of Panahati. But it's you know, they have rice. There's other preparations, bananas, sweetmeats, and all that kind of thing. But what they do is half of the prashadam is rice that's mixed with yogurt, and the other half is rice that's mixed with condensed milk. And they do it like that and separate it out. And then I think they give a certain amount of pots to each of the members and all that kind of thing, and each of the devotees there. So they did that, they had this big festival, and Raghunath Das Goswami, of course, was in ecstasy now, because now he was suddenly entering into essentially the intimate and eternal pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So that's the kind of origins of that Panahati festival. And I want to relay a story now. I don't know if you were there, Manu, I don't think you were. But I want to relay a story now. It must be, I suppose, at least 10 years ago, was it? Maybe even 15? I always find it very hard to get dates like that, but 10 to 15 years ago. So there was, oftentimes when we go and distribute prashadam at festivals, they tend to be related to music, you know, the music festivals. And because the music scene is more alternative, they always want vegetarian, now of course vegan options, whatever. And because we had our first restaurant in Dublin, we opened our first restaurant in Dublin in 1984, I guess, was it 84 in Dawson Lanes? Yeah, that was our first. So we've had restaurants in Dublin like for the last 4 years, you know. And we become known for that. People come down, the alternative people know devotees and Govindas, and it's vegetarian, it's kung food, kind of thing like that. So we'd often get approached to do prashadam at festivals. So this festival was in Drumshanbo. Do you remember that Drumshanbo festival? Yeah. So this festival was in Drumshanbo, which isn't far away from the island. It's only a few miles from Inishan. So we went along, and it was a weekend festival. And, you know, I think we had 4 of those, maybe even more, of those 50-litre stainless steel pots full of sabji, and then we also had some pakoras going, we had a few other preps, I mean. And we were there for the 2 days, and just a string of prashadam, and the queue just never stopped. I mean, it was an amazing thing, you know. You know, you're constantly serving, and there's constantly a queue, you know. So, towards the end of the last day of the festival, literally now, we had run out of water. We were actually just doing pakoras, you know, which wasn't bad because people love pakoras. Pakoras are just absolute. We used to have that advertisement in the Back to Godhead magazine for years. I don't know if you remember it. For years, they had that advertisement in the back of the Sunday Feast in the back of the Back to Godhead magazine, and it would just have a picture of a cauliflower pakora, and it said something like underneath it. So pakoras are great, you know. So that's what we were serving. But then we were running out of. We still had lots of oil. That was okay, and batter. But we had no vegetables left. We'd run out of all the vegetables. So I went to the organisers and I said to them, hey, you know, we just because we still had the festival's probably still had about 2 or 3 hours to go or something. I said, really sorry, we're going to have to back up and go. We literally, you know, we've done everything we possibly could, but now we've nothing left. So they said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, basically we need vegetables. And so sometimes I said, what sort of vegetables as well? Cauliflowers? I said, well, cauliflowers. And I said, the best would be cauliflowers and courgettes, but ultimately anything. You know. So anyway, they go off. They come back about 20 minutes later, and they're carrying this big box of marrows. Now marrows are like, you know, courgettes are soft and sweet. You know, marrow. The bigger the courgette gets, it turns into a marrow. You know. They're more tough and not quite as nice, but it doesn't really matter because once you put them in the batter and deep fry them, I mean, people, you know, in Glasgow, okay, here's a mundane example, okay, just about fried food and why it's so nice, but why it's also a little unhealthy. But anyway, in Glasgow, there was a certain chip shop, okay, and their speciality and their biggest selling preparation, okay, is a deep fried Mars bar. Now I know you won't really know Mars bars, or maybe because they have egg in them, or they used to have egg in them, but like that. So you can't eat them. But it's a chocolate bar. It's a chocolate kind of caramel chocolate bar, you know. I mean, I've eaten them as an envelope, even, but they are very nice, you know. So in Glasgow, they have a chip shop that takes those chocolate bars, dips them in batter, deep fries them. You can just imagine how unhealthy they are. You know? Anyway, so they came back with marrows, and as I say, it didn't really matter because once you put them in the oven and deep fry them, they'll be reasonably tasty, you know. So now we had 3 or 4 of these massive marrows, and we were chopping them. And they more or less did last us for the whole thing, but not quite, because still the queue was still there, you know, as we were coming to the end. And I thought, God, you know, they'd gone to a local farmer, by the way, to get those. And then I thought to myself, God, you know, there's a big queue here. If I was in that queue, we all hate queues, right? That's why in India no one obeys them. Ever go to a train station in India? Yeah? If you're queuing up and then people are milling in from the side, you know. I was in Darjeeling one time, and I was actually bought some postcards to send them back to a few devotees, you know, because I'd never been in Darjeeling before. Beautiful place. I don't know if anyone's been to Darjeeling. Beautiful place. Of course, the Brits, because it was a hot pie, they went there for the summer because it was cooler, you know, whatever. But I was in Darjeeling one time, and I got these postcards and I had to get stamps. So I went into the post office, you know, and same problem. You know, people just coming in after you're queuing, people coming out just jumping up to the thing, you know. And I just couldn't resist it, you know. It was a relatively small post office, you know. I said, "Excuse me, everybody, I have an announcement to make and a question to ask." And everyone kind of stopped, you know, and looked around, turned around. And I said, "My question is, do any of you people who just jumped the queue, do any of you people think there's anybody on this planet who actually likes to queue? I'm just curious. Do you think I like queuing here? And particularly when everyone's jumping in front of it? Like, what do you think when you jump the queue about the people that you're jumping? Do you have any thought for them?" Like, this whole big thing in the post office, you know. And you know what they did? They all stepped aside and let me go up first. It was like, it worked. It was very effective. But anyway, just because of my loathing for queuing, I assume. Does anybody like queuing? When you go into a bank or a pub, you like queuing, okay? Okay. Remember, prasadam is in the queue.
Actually, he likes to queue, but in the front.
So, you know,
I'm queuing. So they will queue for prasadam, right? And then I get him to chant. He says, "Look, if you chant, the queue will go quicker."
It's true. So, none of us like to queue. So I saw this queue, it was still there, and I could see we are not going to have enough pakoras to serve this entire queue. So I made an announcement. We had a microphone, and I made an announcement. And I said, "I'm really, really sorry. I don't know how many people in the queue we will be able to serve." By the way, we started with giving them plates of pakoras of maybe 6 or 7 pakoras. Then we reduced it down to 3 or 4. And by the end of it, we're just giving 1 pakora to everybody. I said, I don't know how many people, some of you will go without. I'm really, really sorry. And I don't want you queuing and then finding out that you've got nothing. So that's still about 100, 150 people in the queue, you know. After I finished making the announcement, they all stayed in the queue, in the hope, I guess, that they were still going to get something. They didn't wander away. But after I finished the announcement, a guy that we had just served some pakoras, young guy, you know, in his 20s or something, he says, "Oh, do you mind if I take the microphone? I just want to say something." And I kind of thought, you know, when someone says that, you kind of think, you're taking a risk here, you know, what's it? But because he had taken the course and he was really enjoying them, I thought, probably okay. So he takes the microphone, he turns to the queue, and he says, "I just want to share something with you all. And I really, really, really do hope and pray that you all get some of these." And he turned to me and said, "What are they?" I said, "Pakora. Pakora." He said, "I hope you all get some of these pakoras." He says, "Because I have never tasted anything in my life like what I'm just eating now." He says, "It is absolutely, if I can describe to you all," he says, "it's like you take it and the smell hits your nose first, and it's this beautiful smell of different aromas that I'm not familiar with, I've never smelled before, but they're absolutely sensational." He said, "And it's warm, because you can feel that on your fingers," he said. "Then you put it into your mouth, and He says, and the first thing is it's really crispy. It's really nice and crispy. He says, and you crunch into it. He says, and then inside, it's all soft and succulent and the crispiness and I'm sitting at the he's going to try them out even more, telling the people who aren't going to get anything. He says, and then you crunch it, and then the succulent and it mixes together and melts in your mouth. And he says, and he's holding his last one, he goes, they are just absolutely delicious. And then he crunches it out into the microphone. But my afterthought of it was, the power of prasadam, it is just out of this world. This fella had never tasted prasadam before, never known us before, nothing, whatever, complete newcomer. And suddenly he's doing the sales pitch for prasadam that even a devotee would struggle to actually beat. It was just absolutely incredible, And then, one last story actually. I wanted to go to the purport, I'm not going to have time. I was going to tell the story, maybe you know the story, real quick about when Lakshmi wanted to distribute Narayan's prasadam, and Narayan didn't really want his prasadam, but she managed to convince him, and then Narada Muni eventually, he's the first to get this prasadam, and he eats it all, and he's dancing in ecstasy, and he's dancing all over, he doesn't even know where he is, dancing around the universe, just in the ecstasy, like this fella in Drumshambo, you could almost imagine him starting to dance around the universe, chanting the glories of prasadam. But Narada was chanting, didn't even know where he was. He eventually arrives at Mount Kailash, Lord Shiva's abode, and then Lord Shiva says, Narada, you look like you're intoxicated, what's going on? And he explains, I just got some of Lord Narayan's Mahaprasad, and it's just, it's so nice, and just put me into ecstasy. And of course, what was the first question Lord Shiva asked? Have you got something for me? And Narada goes, oh no, I don't have any left. And then Lord Shiva sees a tiny morsel under his fingernail. Is that some of the prasadam under your fingernail? And Narada, so he takes it from his fingernail and gives it to Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva is dancing in ecstasy. Now the problem with Lord Shiva, of course, is when he starts dancing, is that he has an annihilation dance. And he slipped into his annihilation dance, and then his wife Parvati saw this and said, oh, you guys, sorry, it's not time for the annihilation. Well, what are you doing? How is this happening? And he says, I just got some of Lord Narayan's Mahaprasad, And what did Parvati ask? And he said, no, I didn't keep any for you. And then what does she do? She goes, she ultimately goes to Lord Narayan actually, and gets the mercy from Lord Narayan. But Lord Narayan then, in that pastime, the idea is that, okay, my Mahaprasadam should be available. I think the reference is made to the Rath Yatra actually, in the Jagannath Festival. But my prasadam should be made available at all times for the people of Bharatvarsh or whatever, or in this material world like that. And again, just emphasizes the absolute importance of prasadam, how we prepare it. The whole thing, it's like Prabhupada explains about meat eating, that it's not just the people that eat the meat, it's the people that, the farmers that cultivate the animals, the people who slaughter the animals, the people who sell the meat, the people who buy it, the people who cook it, the people who serve it. It's a whole, everyone. And it's the same prasadam in the exact opposite direction, that all of it should be done in the consciousness of understanding. And it starts from understanding that all the basic ingredients, just like actually in the Panahati festival, the first thing that Raghunath Das Goswami did was he went out and bought all the ingredients, but in the consciousness of understanding that this is going to be transformed into Krishna Prasadam. So it's a whole science and a whole art, and we should try to imbibe and embrace that science and that art as much as possible, because we want the Prasadam to be as potent as it possibly can be, like that. But yeah, just the potency of Prasadam is absolutely extraordinary. But I just want to finish then on this, because in the purport it talks about the three modes of material nature. And it doesn't matter who we are, where we're from, what our status in society is, absolutely has no bearing. The waves of the material energy and the modes of nature toss us around in this ocean. Sometimes you'll see in those nature videos, you'll see, you sometimes see whales that have caught a seal or something like that. Or even dolphins that of course, it's really interesting in the material world as well, isn't it? It's just so interesting. I actually saw a video the other day of a bird, it was birds, I can't remember what birds they were now, but one of the chicks the mother had just given birth, whatever, and the other eggs had just broken. She had, I don't know, 6 or 7 chicks, whatever it was. And one of them was weaker than the others, you know. And the mother just sticks her beak into the weak one, kills it, and then feeds it to the others. It's just, you know, we hear the bird song in the morning at dawn, and everyone thinks it's so beautiful. You know, because Prabhupada says, doesn't he? He says what they're saying, what the birds are singing in the morning is, where is food, where is sex? Prabhupada is just so amazing, just cuts through all the sentimentality, all the kind of nonsense ideas that people have, you know. But it's just so brutal, the material energy. So you sometimes see that dolphins that catch a baby seal, and before they eat it, before they even kill it, they just start throwing it to one. It's almost like a basketball game or something. They're just throwing the thing around to each other, different dolphins. And most people here in Ireland, we have fungi. Is fungi still around down in Kerry? You know, fungi the dolphin, you know, as a tourist attraction, everyone goes to see fungi. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful fungi, you know, yeah, let's see what fungi does when he's under the water, you know, or when he's out to sea, you know. It's such a cruel thing, materially. So everyone gets tossed in these waves, no matter who we are, where we're from, etc. And, you know, in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we have that verse that I've just learned, and it's Sarva Bhuteshu Yenaikam. Do you know this verse? Sarva Bhuteshu, because I know you know lots of verses. Sarva Bhuteshu Yenaikam. Bhavam Abhiyam Ikshate. Bhavam Abhiyam Ikshate. Bear with me. Abhibhaktam Vibhakteshu Tajganam Vidisatvikam. You probably got it on your screen. I think that's right. I think that's right. And it's just explaining that same point that you know, it actually gets it slightly different. It talks about that knowledge. This is the mode of goodness. That knowledge which understands, where we understand that there is a difference between matter and spirit. But that is only then the mode of goodness. Because the impersonalists think like that too. They understand there's a difference between matter and spirit. You know, it's not just the devotees. And I just wanted to say this because, you know, we talked about prasadam, etc. But I just wanted to make this point. We have to be so careful. We are in the material world. This is Maya's kingdom. You know, we've got to understand that. Yes, when we're in the association of the devotees, when we're chanting Hare Krishna, when we're honoring prasadam, these are all incredible protective shields against the influence of Maya. Incredible protective shields. But Maya is powerful, and we can't dance with her. You know, we can't play games with her, or we can't be complacent in her kingdom. If we're complacent, she'll quickly grab us, you know, and we then will be lost like that. So the reason I wanted to just focus on that a little bit is because the first verse I ever learned, and I think many devotees it was the first verse, although something, you know, depends where you joined, I think, but the first verse I ever learned was Tehino Smin Yatade. Who's going to give me the English translation? Please.
So it means that our body grows, we first get born, then we become into a child, and then we become teenagers, then we become youth, and then we get old, and then we die. But soul is not like that. Soul is always eternal.
The soul remains identical. It never changes. Absolutely. Thank you. So that's the first verse that many devotees learn. And even when I said it, everyone started chanting it because everyone kind of knows that verse. We are not these temporary material bodies. Okay. So one of the biggest indicators of that verse in terms of us not understanding that we're eternal spirit souls is or are flags. Flags. We have an Irish flag. We have a UK flag. We have an English flag. We have a Scottish flag. We have a Welsh flag. We have a Northern Irish flag. We have an Indian flag. Very similar to the Irish flag, actually. We have an Indian flag. Every country on this planet has a flag, and they love waving it. They wave it in the context of, let's say, the mode of goodness, in the context of this is patriotism. We are patriots. But here's the truth, just like Prabhupada says, what are those birds chirping? We call it birdsong. Ah, it's beautiful. Oh, the dawn chorus. Oh, the dawn chorus is waking us up. You know, it's beautiful. Prabhupada says, no, they're just simply saying, where's food, where's sex? So when they talk about patriotism, there is literally, you couldn't get, at least what we say, you couldn't get a cigarette paper between patriotism and nationalism, and then between nationalism and racism. They're essentially the same thing. Patriotism is just a soft version of racism, like that. So we have got to be so careful. I know, for instance, in our movement at the minute, there is a little bit of a challenging situation between Russian devotees and Ukrainian devotees. Now, on one level, I find that bewildering. I say, you're not Russian, you're not Ukrainian, you're not Irish, you know, you're not Indian, you know, we're not the body. This is the basic tenet of the Krishna conscious philosophy. And unless we, one, understand that, which I think we all do, and then start shifting from that knowledge to vegan, to realize knowledge, meaning we actually realize it, you know. I was quite fortunate actually growing up because I consider myself a Mongol, and that means I was born in England of Irish parents. And when I was growing up in England, I was told by my parents and whatever, that Ireland is this beautiful land of milk and honey, peaceful, everyone's friendly, oh, it's so much better than England. Kind of, that was the Irish kind of thing. When I was 10, my family moved back to Ireland. And when I came back to Ireland, I like Cockney accent because I grew up near London. I came back to Ireland in the 70s when what was happening was a thing called the Troubles, you know, British Irish Catholic Protestant. And for 2-3 years, when I first arrived here, going to school with my British accent, I just got beaten up every day in school by the Irish guys thinking I'm just a Brit. So my love for Ireland that my parents had tried to give me, you know, immediately disappeared, you know. So to some degree that's fortunate. You're a Mongol, you know, you don't really have a home anywhere, you know, the Brits don't really, when you go to England they think, oh you're Irish, you know, and when you're in Ireland they think, you know, sort of this kind of thing, you've got like an accent that sort of straddles the two. But anyway, that's a detail. This thing about understanding and realizing that we're not these temporary material bodies, it's not actually that easy, you know, it really isn't that easy, and we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking just because we read it in the Bhagavad Gita that somehow or another, that's it, I've achieved that. No, we've got to get to this platform of vegan, full realization that we are eternal spiritual beings and not these temporary material bodies. Because, as I say, you know, we can fall victim of that. Actually, even from the Indian perspective, since your recent Prime Minister, not that recent actually, no, of course he's there for quite some time, I have sensed a change in the mentality of some Indian devotees that somehow or another that they see that currently there is a quasi. Now I know that he's pushing, for instance, to close slaughterhouses, and that's all wonderful, you know, but a little bit like the verse that we read today, whether you're in the mode of goodness or the mode of ignorance, unless you're on the transcendental Krishna conscious platform, those things don't really matter. Yes, from a relative point of view, we can analyze that it's better if you're pushing vegetarianism than not doing that. But that doesn't translate to that being, you know, spiritual practice necessarily. It may help your spiritual practice, but it's not. So yeah, we just got to be so careful with this understanding that, you know, we're not these temporary material bodies. Nationality is just one aspect, of course. Sense gratification is a much bigger one. It doesn't really matter. You know, I can turn around and say, well, I don't identify with any particular nationality, Irish, English, or any of them. I'm fine. Yeah, but if I'm still like, you know, feeding my senses loads of sense gratification, then that's also useless as well, you know. So all of these things, yeah, to understand this process and not to take it cheaply. And it is an amazing thing, because on the other side, as we've been talking about prasadam, what easier way, and Prabhupada said that many times, you know, you can eat your way back to Godhead by just always honoring prasadam. You can literally eat your way back to Godhead. So in one sense, it's very, very easy. But there are many, many pitfalls along the way that we have to be really conscious of and really aware of to make sure that we avoid those pitfalls like that. Okay, I better stop 49. It's much later than I should have gone on. So thank you all very much for listening. Really appreciate that. Manu, do I ask for questions or comments? Okay, maybe take one or two, maybe if anybody does happen to have a question or comment. Of course, if you don't have any questions or comments, that's absolutely fine too. Does anybody have a question or comment? Yeah.
Just when Lord attended last time, you mentioned about it, there would be full to the neck. Lord attending would be full to the neck, And then in the scriptures, it seems to be a contradiction because the scripture says you shouldn't overeat. Because if you eat once a day, just once a day, that will help you spiritually balance. So it appears to be a contradiction.
Raise his edge, as Prabhupada used to use that phrase. It's true, Prabhupada, what was that pastime with Prabhupada where the sannyasis were getting the Mahaprasadam first? And Prabhupada says, no. You can get it first, but you should just take a tiny little sample of the Mahaprasadam to honor it. And then it should go to the other devotees, because the very point that you're making, we should not overeat like that. So it's always balance, it's about, and as we get older, we particularly when it comes to eating, we should be, because Robert also said that, he said for newcomers, fill them to their necks, he said, give them prasadam, let them eat so much prasadam that their knees will wobble, was the phrase that he used. Their knees will wobble, because they're just so the combination is so full and so intoxicated, that they won't even be able to stand up properly, So for newcomers, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, we should, as we advance in Krishna consciousness, understand that we can't just be, filling our necks every time we sit down for prasadam. Actually, Prabhupada gives that example of the getting on an Indian train. I remember the first time I got on an Indian train. Oh, what have I done? Get me off this train, please. Because they're just so full. It's just like they're crammed full everywhere. On the roof, people are sitting on the roof, And then when you come to the next stop, there's a massive amount of people on the platform. They thinking they're getting on this train, and then you have the guys with the big things. What do they call those guys? They're selling the snacks and
Snacks.
Yeah, but what do they call it? Something wallet. I can't remember which wallets they're called. They call something. But it's not just. It's like they have a big contraption around their neck that sticks out like this, and they've got all their snacks and the whole thing on it. You're thinking you're getting on this train? I mean, are you mad? And then the train stops. Practically nobody gets off. All these people somehow they get on. I remember it because I stood my ground at the door, because the door was like the window was down, so you get some air. And I was just holding that position, holding onto the kind of combination of the door and not allowing myself to be moved, so I'd at least have the air. But people are just coming on and thinking, where are all these people going, And then these guys get on as well. And they start coming down this somehow or another. This absolutely cram-packed carriage, and they're going down selling stuff, I remember thinking to myself, God, you've got to learn, this is helping me to learn tolerance, because it's like, no one else is worried about all this, those people on the train is perfectly normal, no big deal, this white guy, it's stressed out to the max kind of thing on the train. But anyway, Prabhupada gives the example, on a packed Indian train. He says, you've got your seat and you're sitting down, and more people are getting on the train, and then you see somebody who's trying to see if there's any space they can sit in beside you, and you're kind of giving them the death stare, don't try it, and they get the message, they don't want you to try it, or the person sitting down doesn't want me coming in. So what do? Next thing they produce you're a little older, but a 3 or 4 year old little girl, with a sad look on her face, and looking at you, can she? So then, you know, people beside you edge one way, you know, and you're kind of obliged to edge with them or edge the other way, or whatever it might be, you know. So, and actually, in hindsight, you always should edge to the inside, you know, because if you edge, and that's the example Father gives actually, you know, you slightly edge to the other side, you know. The next thing, the man or the mother or the father will come over with a little girl and put them then between you and the other person, you know. And then you're sitting there, the girl's happy, you know, and you smile at her and she smiles and everyone's happy. Then 5 minutes later, he produces another kid. And it's kind of like, you know, and then someone edges it, and then you're forced to edge a little bit out like this, and the next thing you've got another kid. And before you know it, the whole family's in it, and you're off the seat. You know, you don't have the seat anymore. And Prabhupada says, this is how Maya operates in the material world. He says, you give an inch, just a tiny little inch, and you think, oh, that's okay if it's okay, I'll chant 10 rounds today, I won't chant 16, or you know, whatever it might be, you know. So you just give that little opening, but before you know it, Maya's taken in, she's pushed you right off the seat of devotional service, and you're back in, being tossed in the waves of the material energy. So yeah, we have to always take things in context, and we have to understand the higher principle, like Paul was talking earlier about changing clothes and that kind of thing. So yes, prasadam is wonderful, but if you're a devotee, particularly if you're a devotee of any length of time, if every time you sit down, you literally feel like you can't get up at the end of it because you're just so full, that's also not helpful. That falls into the category. I mean, I suppose technically this can't happen with prasadam, maybe to some degree or whatever. But the Christians have the what is it? The seven what do they call them? The 7 sins, deadly sins, and one of them, of course, is gluttony. You know, so yeah, that would fall into the category of being gluttonous. You know, and that's not good. We shouldn't be gluttonous.
And just one quick thing is, so you mentioned the healthy, wealthy, and wise. I met people only a couple of weeks ago who were still talking about that on the street in London.
So you met people who
remember talking about those times when the healthy, wealthy,
okay.
and it was very cheap, like kitschery, and sometimes they give away free. I'm not sure, I can't remember whether it was just a donation based or not, but there would be a queue round the corner. You'd be out, you know, Soul Street, outside Soul Street, and then right round the corner onto Tottenham Court Road, or whatever it was,
Yes, Oxford Street.
Oxford Street, yeah, sorry. So, and they still talk about those days.
Yeah. You know, now that you mention Healthy Wise again, and because we're on this topic of balance, okay, I used to work in Healthy Wise, and they used to do a dressing, a lemon and oil dressing, okay? But for whatever reason, and I'm not really sure, etc., but they used to put chives in it. Now chives are from the onion family, as we know, and of course we don't eat onions as devotees. But they just used to put a few fresh sprigs or whatever of chives in the lemon and oil dressing. And I remember this so well, you know, one day, a sannyasi who will remain nameless, who came in to Healthy, Wealthy and Wise, and queued up. He didn't pay, of course, but he queued up, and he got a lovely plate of prasadam, so it was rice, dal, sabjis, etc. And he had some salad, and he got some of that dressing. And actually, I don't remember how he then realised. I think someone must have said something. I don't actually know, but it came to his attention then that there were chives on the dressing that was on the salad. So when he got to the end of the queue to go and sit down, when he was informed of this, there was a bin just about it, and he just took the plate of prasadam, put it over the bin, and tipped it all in the bin. And I always remember thinking, I was a bhakta, you know, barely a bhakta kind of thing, and I always remember thinking, that just seems an odd thing to do, you know, it just seems so wasteful, you know. So for me, that's another extreme, because later, and this is why I really thought that was extreme at the time, not at the time, I thought it was extreme, but I thought it was, my thought process I felt was confirmed when I read this pastime of Prabhupada in Hari Sori's diary. Brilliant pastime, you know. It's like Prabhupada is going to a wealthy Indian family, somewhere in, I think it's somewhere in the Mumbai region actually, somewhere near Mumbai. And they're going there, and Prabhupada is trying to establish a Jew temple at the time, which was a major challenge for him, you know. I mean, the things that we did in those days, you know, devotees, how stupid we were. After we bought the land from that Mr. Nair, you know, somehow or another he tricked the devotees at the time into giving it back to him, even though we paid for it. And so Prabhupada had so many struggles, so many struggles. So anyway, he's gone to this wealthy life member's house for prasadam, you know, and give, I think he gave a little talk or something like that, you know, and then they had prasadam. So the devotees is sitting down and the prasadam is served. And then one of the devotees beside Prabhupada says, "Oh Prabhupada, just want to let you know, there's onions in the sabji." And Prabhupada looks at the sabji and turns to the devotee and says, "No, there isn't." And the devotee says, "Oh, there is, Prabhupada, there is." And the devotee, "No, there isn't." And it goes backwards and forwards, you know, 3 or 4 times. I think someone else even joins in then and backs up the devotee and says, "No, Prabhupada, there's onions there." And Prabhupada says, "No, there isn't." And Prabhupada just ate the prasadam. Even though it had onions in it, it did have onions in it. But Prabhupada's point was, the higher principle here is, you know, we're trying to build a temple of Radha Krishna here in Juhu. We're trying to get that done. These people can really help us and facilitate us. We are not going to insult them by telling them. Now, I doubt that would have extended if there had been chicken on the plate. I mean, you know, obviously you have to draw a line somewhere, you know. But onions, you know, they're a vegetable. The history of them, of course, as we understand, or at least as I understand it, the history, the Vedic kind of history of them is that when Kali first attacked Mother Cow and Dharma, etc., when he attacked them like that and drew blood, that blood went into the ground, and from that blood came, I think, garlic rather than onions, but obviously onions and garlic. And then chives. Chives are the soft end of the onion family. You know, garlic is the hard end, you know, but chives are kind of the soft end of the onion family. Yet this sannyasi decided that he's just going to throw the whole thing. I just thought that's just too extreme, you know. And I really feel reading that pastime of Prabhupada about the onions that kind of does indicate that. Yeah. So Prabhupada says, no, the higher principle here is we're trying to build a temple of Radha Krishna. It's been such a battle for all different reasons. It costs an extraordinary amount of luxury. These people can facilitate and help us by that, but we're not going to insult them. You know? The high principle is let them make a donation. You know? Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Om Premanandi. Oh yes, very sorry. I have to read out the all the devotees who engaged in the wonderful austerity of Nirjal Ekadashi. So I have a list of the devotees here who. Okay. I have it here somewhere. Yes, there we are. Okay. By Guru and Gauranga's mercy, excited to announce the Japa score for Nirjal Pandava Ekadashi. And this is coming from Abhay Giriraj. Abhay Giriraj has provided these details. So he's giving us, sorry, oh, that's not too long. Okay, he's giving us 3 years, 2023, 24, 25, to sort of indicate the increase, if you like. So in 2023, 2 devotees chanted 192 rounds. Wow, Hare Krishna. 192, 7 minutes on average a round.
23 hours.
22. That's amazing, actually. That is really amazing. That's really putting the senses, including not just the senses, but also sleep. It's sort of suspending the senses, sleep, everything. Amazing. Anyway, 2 devotees, 192 rounds. 3 devotees, 128 rounds. 5 devotees, 64 rounds plus. And 6 devotees, 32 rounds plus. In 2024, it was 2 devotees, same, 192 rounds, so they're the same 2 devotees, maybe. Anyway, it's the same. 5 devotees did 128 rounds, so that's an increase of 2, it was 3 in the year before. 2 devotees 108 rounds. That's a new addition. There was no 108 rounds previously. So 2 devotees did 108 rounds. 9 devotees did 64 rounds plus. It was 5 in the previous year, so it increased by 4. And 4 devotees did 32 rounds plus. So that's actually a drop of 2 devotees, but presumably those 2 devotees that dropped out of the 32 they elevated themselves to a higher number. And this year, 192 rounds, 7 devotees. Wow! So that's gone from 2 the previous 2 years to 7, a jump of 5. So 7 devotees, 192 rounds. And I don't know what that emoji is, but he is attached to that. It's the one with the kind of raised eyebrows and closed eyes, whatever that one is. I suppose it's a bit of a wow, I suppose. Then 100.
What's the mouth doing?
What's the what then? The mouth? The mouth has a little smile. It's not a moving emoji. And then, so 7 devotees, 192. 4 devotees, 175 plus. Wow. That's really amazing stuff, actually. 1 devotee, 150 rounds. 5 devotees, 108 rounds plus. Last year it was just 2. 7 devotees, 64 rounds plus, but that's from 9, but presumably the other 2 went up the scale. And 5 devotees, which is an increase of 1, did 32 rounds plus. So that is really astonishing stuff. So Abhagiriyar says, please bless us so we can all continue in this vein to continue doing this. All glories to Shri Guru and Guru Vanga.
His Grace Pragosh Prabhuji ki Jai.
And Krishna Abhishek has been sending stuff out on. Oh, I see. You're sending out.
Oh, these are okay.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to take this bottle with me. If that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
What?
We have prasada, sir. Maybe something fried.
Mahaprasade Govinde
Mahaprasade Govinde
Namagramani Vaishnave
Namagramani Vaishnave
Sadhunyavatam Rajan
Vishvasvare Jayate
Shariram
Fantastic. Make sure